Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today, I'm talking about the debut album from Röyksopp, Melody AM. This is part 2 of a request from a friend of mine. This time I'm getting into Röyksopp, the cult favorite electro-pop duo from Norway. Now, when I got this request, my first thought was, wow, Röyksopp. Now, there's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Before that request came in, I hadn't listened to them or barely even thought about them for over 2 years. I do hope that the Röyksopp cult isn't like the Eric Prydz or Audiker cults, though, because I'll be honest, I just never developed a particularly strong emotional connection to them. I like them, but I don't love them. I picked them up via Pandora recommendation back in high school and liked certain songs, but didn't find them to grab my attention a ton overall. I think aside from one album, they're more of a singles band than an albums band, and found myself returning their stuff to refresh my memory and realizing my opinion basically hadn't changed that much. I remember when their Inevitable End album came out and thinking, yeah, it's probably for the best that they only stick to EPs and singles from now on. So yeah, I think they're just alright. Please don't kill me. But, in case you were wondering what album of theirs I actually did like all the way through, you can at least rest easy knowing it's the one I'm talking about here. While most of Röyksopp's work is more laid-back electro-pop kind of stuff, this album is far and away their least pop-centric album. It still has pop sensibilities, but at its core it's much more strange and left field than anything else they've done. Now, the main thing about this album that sets it apart from Röyksopp's other albums is the fact that no two songs on this album sound alike. Compare it to Junior, an album that I probably do like all the individual songs in, but feels too samey sounding and I get kinda sick of its overall sound before the album runs its course. But Melody AM has a nice healthy variety that allows it to stand up particularly well. On the other hand, the album is also particularly short, only about 45 minutes total. In most cases I'd be hungering for more than just that, but sometimes less is more. In the case of this album, nothing feels particularly large-scale or like it needed a lot of space to breathe, or rather it got the space to breathe and nothing felt like it got dragged on too long or underdeveloped. So, I guess I'll go down track by track. So Easy starts things out, and while this is definitely a song that probably didn't take a ton of effort on Röyksopp's part, it is just basically based around one sample of Blue on Blue by Gals and Pals that just repeats over and over through the entirety of the song. But I'm gonna be humming that sample for weeks. It gets lodged in my head like none of the other songs on here. Now, I seem to have some vague memory of the track Poor Leno having this effect as well when I was in high school, but honestly that track doesn't even come close to this. Anyway, next, the track Apple seems to be the fan favorite, but especially coming after the complete earworm that is So Easy, this one just never left a huge impression on me personally. It's cool to hear all the bubbly synth patterns floating around, and it's definitely an interesting track that adds to the album's variety and overall sound, but I forget how it goes after it's done. It just kinda passes by without really leaving that much of an impression on me personally. Sparks takes things down a more laid-back avenue and also has some pretty catchy vocals from Anneli Drecker, the one name attached to this album that I actually am going to try to pronounce. This was a big favorite of mine at first, but it kinda got tiring with repeat listens. It's a tad repetitive. I should mention that this album basically got similar treatment to that of the Richard D. James album, in that I probably gave it too many consecutive repeat listens and got kinda sick of it over time. Although, to be fair, I didn't get nearly as sick of this as I did of Richard D. James at my most tired. I guess that's mainly because, well, it's a great album to listen to when you're just really tired and fed up with everything around you, but you still need to walk all the way to the train station. Cheers me up, gets me moving a little faster. Anyway, In Space is next, and this is a song that I kinda wish got more credit. It's based around a lot of orchestral samples and harps. The result is a beautifully tranquil mood piece that reflects its title fairly well. Poor Leno may not quite be the total earworm that I remembered it to be, but I do always find myself singing along with it, and it does take things in a little more up-tempo and energetic direction. A Higher Place is pretty similar to Apple, being kinda odd and quirky and covered in bubbly synth patterns, but I personally kinda prefer this one. The voice sample near the end helps it to be a little more memorable than that track was. But then we get to the big centerpiece of the album, Röyksopp's Night Out, the longest, most well-fleshed out, and most fun to listen to song on the whole album. There's a lot of repetitive samples and beats driving everything along, but there's also lots of synth effects and orchestral noises coming in for texture, and the result is basically like some kind of the background music to a car chase scene in a movie. Really epic song, and easily my favorite on the album. Remind Me is the closest this album comes to having a straight pop song, and while it does feel a little disappointing coming right after Röyksopp's Night Out, it's a good song in its own right. The melody's pretty catchy, and while I don't really sing along to it in the same way I do with Poor Leno, it does have that really laid-back and small-scale humbleness that I get out of the majority of this album. Not a personal favorite, but still one that gets stuck in my head and I hum along to regardless. She's So is another highlight for me, with all the saxophones and shifting synth pads, as well as that nice classy jazz sample near the middle. The lo-fi reversed outro feels like it might have dragged on the song a little more than it needed to be, but it's a nice touch, I suppose. Makes things interesting. Finally, the album ends with a two-parter track, 40 Years Back / Come. The first section has a lot of odd synth patterns that sound like they were happy, but are modulated to feel kinda unsettling, and I suppose the string textures added on top help that too. And the second section is just one repetitive and quiet little synth pattern that just kinda repeats a few times and ends. To be honest, it's not a particularly strong ending and leaves something to be desired, but it's not bad either. But overall, I did enjoy this album quite a bit. It does work best when I'm just kinda on a walk to the train station to get home from college at night, as it is quite simplistic and doesn't require a lot of brain usage to fully enjoy, and since it's nice and laid back most of the time, it's also comforting when I'm tired. Although not to the point where I'd use it to fall asleep, as it does have enough going on to keep me awake and moving while I'm walking. I'm not sure if I'm gonna have this in heavy rotation like other people do, but it was nice to go back to this album and remember when I used to care more about this band. So yeah, I guess I'm kinda ambivalent on Royksopp in general, and I don't see them ever becoming a particularly favorite band of mine. But this album is almost certainly their best work, and I can definitely see a place in my life for it that I never really gave it the chance for. I don't have a strong personal connection to it myself, but I can definitely see why so many other people do. I'm overall feeling a solid 8 out of 10. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I would like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.